in the military, you're taught to do more with less. So within my business model, I pretty much did the same thing. And I believe that's what kind of made me successful within my first couple of years, is because we really did more with less.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. My special guest here is Kern Alexander. But before I get to him, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. That's how more people can learn about the great disruption that we're doing. They can learn more about people like Kern Alexander and some of the other great guests we've had before. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please write a review. Please like us. Again, we want to spread the word, spread the love, but we need your help, fellow disruptors. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate reviews on Apple, iTunes, or if you're listening to us on Google, wherever you might be listening to us, we really appreciate your support. We've had a really, really good year. We plan on having a really good 2022 as well. So, all right. So Kern Alexander is with the Higher Collection. He's also served our country. So he's a businessman, he's a serviceman, and it's an honor to have him on the show. Kern, how you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me today, man.
No problem. No problem. Here. No, pleasure to have you. And you're out of Oakland, California, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah, my business is based out of Oakland, California. All
right. So how does one go from serving our country, and thank you for that, to jumping into owning a dispensary, and like how does that happen? How did that happen? Those seem to be very different.
How did they get to collide?
Yeah, I'm just curious how we start. Just jump right in. Like how does one do that? Like How did you get there? How this path find you?
Well, what happened was I was based in California. A lot of my career, I started my career in 2007, and my first duty station was in Travis Air Force Base, which is in Northern California. So I kind of had roots there since about 2007. Now, throughout my time being in the military, of course, you get deployed all over the place, but I've always seemed to come back to California. It was like always my place where I would come back to. So even when I got stationed overseas, I would come back. I got stationed elsewhere and I still came back. So, I got out, and my path wasn't really paved. At first I knew that I didn't want to go back to doing what I was doing before, which is pretty much overworking myself for the government. I know I wanted to kind of take that leap of faith and get out there on my own. So one of my buddies, he had a cannabis dispensary back in the day in 2015. This was more like the medicinal model.
Back in the day, 2015. That's now back in the day, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'll tell you this: 2015.
So much has changed.
I know, right? I tell people we had COVID has changed like time. There used to be ACBC,
man,
and now it's like, ACBC after COVID, before COVID. That's
COVID,
right? I mean,
and that's a real life thing. I feel like 2 years of my life has just been missing. I don't even know what really. It just went so fast. You know what I mean?
Does it seem like 2 years? I tell people the last 2 years has felt like 15. Like it's like, man, it feels like a time warp, bro. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
Crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so essentially back in 2015, it was more like a medicinal model in the cannabis space where you could have like collectives. So my buddy kind of did his thing, and he started his collective. So he kind of hit me up and was like, yo, bro, what you doing now that you out? You should hop into cannabis space. At first, I was against it because my job in the military, I was I worked intelligence. So for me, I try to do things the right way.
Right.
So for me, a lot of times.
So you got a lot of stuff you can't discuss with us on the show.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But getting into the cannabis space, it was a learning curve. So at first I didn't jump right in. I was a student. I became a student to my boy, learned the ways of how it actually worked. And then I became a patient. That's really what won me over to the space itself. I went into the VA. As I said, I'm 100% disabled. And I walked out with a bag full of medicine. It may have been 2 bags full of medicine. A lot of it was Motrin, but a lot of it was upper and downer, kind of like psychotics, or psychoactives. So I didn't really want to put myself through that. after having to put myself through taking pills throughout my whole career already. So I actually sat down with a cannabis doctor, and they gave me alternatives for PTSD, alternatives for anxiety, lack of sleep. I wasn't sleeping. My sleep schedule was all jacked up. So that's really what won me over. I decided to just become an advocate for it in a positive manner, because in 2015 it was, everybody was looking at it like, oh my God, you're a drug dealer, but for real.
Yeah, I know it's how they were looking at it. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I had to put a positive spin on it and actually show that this drug can actually help, it can actually wean people off of the things that people were stuck on. So spoke with that cannabis doctor, changed my life pretty much. I'm
of the belief, sorry to interrupt you. I'm of the belief that, and it's a controversial opinion, but I believe it. I think most drugs should be legalized and regulated, because when it goes underground, that's when we create a new criminal element. It helps that thrive. There can obviously be some debates about other types of drugs, but certainly marijuana has put more Black and brown people in jail unnecessarily than any other substance, and it's been used as a reason. Exactly. And so what I like about you being involved is at least now some of us are participating in the opportunity to make a return, because unfortunately you are the exception to the rule. Most of the time we're not involved in the process. We don't have an opportunity to be involved in the process unless we're in jail, which some of us are still in jail for crimes related to marijuana, while mostly everyone else is benefiting from it. So I do applaud you for doing that.
And then, what we do too is we try to help with education, because what I learned being within the space is you don't know what you don't know, you don't know those opportunities when those licenses open up. You don't know when those cities become legal, or how much the actual cost is. If people knew the actual cost of things, sometimes they probably wouldn't run away from it. Cost. In the beginning, it cost me about $2,500, but now, the cost has almost tripled, quadrupled in certain places to get within the space. So we try to push the education of getting in the medical space while we have the opportunity. The medical space was the lowest. Exactly. Because the medical space for me was the lowest point of entry and the easiest point of entry to get in. When it became recreational, it was overpriced, and then the barrier of entry became super high.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll tell you, it's really, when we talk about educating our community and entering at the point of where the opportunity is, like you said, is really, really important for lots of things, because that's where wealth opportunities are created. And if we're ever going to really address the racial wealth gap, we have to move on these opportunities as they present themselves. So that's an example that you mentioned. I'm big in the space of Web3. I don't know if you know much about Web3, but NFTs.
I've been checking on it.
Yeah. So we have the first Black-owned NFT marketplace on the globe. It's built on Flow blockchain. It's called Disrupt Art. But I say all that to say, I'm working to onboard people because I don't want them to be excluded from this opportunity. Right now, it's a great time to get in, and just the opportunity is just ample, right? But it won't necessarily be that way in 3 to 5 years. Had you been
the barriers of entry gonna be way too high.
Like this show,
and then even not the barrier of entry, the misconceptions to entry will be so rampant.
Well, that's it. That's a really good point. The misconception to entry, and I want to get back to your point, and I'll do very quickly here, but the problem that people are that's stopping people a lot is two things. It's this block in their mind. It's either I'm not a technical person, so I can't do that, which is not, you don't have to be a technical person. I mean, you know how email works. You're not a technical person. All you need to understand is how the things basic work. One, or two, everybody's saying it's a fraud. Well, I said, all right, listen, it's not a fraud, but it's $17 billion has been created this year. So it's the best performing asset right now across the entire country. So if it's a fraud, you at least need to see what's going on, where people are going.
Yeah, why?
Why? It is not a fraud, but getting people, I think that's also a trap we have in our mind.
Fear, we do.
Fear.
We mentally block ourselves from opportunities before we even try them. A lot of times, I used to be in these clubhouse rooms, and I would hear people just discouraging people so much on entry into the cannabis space, and I'm like, people are like, oh, you won't ever be able to get into the New York space. It's going to be too expensive. There's not even any rules. There's no rules to the space yet. What do you mean it's going to be too expensive? You know what I mean? Like there are no legislation saying what that price tag is, but it's all a mental psych out.
It's all a mental cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of trauma passed down too. So from
for sure.
Like this fear has been ingrained. Someone told me.
Oh, because you got to think, even with my parents, you know, like, and like, even though I'm successful within my field, they're still like, you sure you want to deal with that? You know what I mean? Like, it's like a mental block. And I'm like, if they come for me, then they got to come for everybody that's doing the same thing. That's a lot of people.
I heard Gary Vee say this, like, he said, our parents have been great and they teach you a lot of great things. And I'll take your values, but I'll apply my work approach and ethics. Like, because we need to evolve, right? Like we take a lot of the values about being a good person, about working hard. Yes. But we also can't take their mindset with us. We'll take our mindset. We'll take that. We'll have our value. We'll take their values and apply our mindset.
And work
their mindset, right? Because their mindset is based upon a world that they know that it probably was an accurate mindset to have when they were growing up. It made sense, right?
Just the government. I said the same thing about the government. I don't understand why our government is ran by 80-year-olds. They don't even understand the technology era. Like, what?
Well, it's because we allow it. The quick answer to that is that when people become more involved, we'll see a change. But the answer to that is that 80-year-olds and 60-year-olds vote and participate all the time. We participate sometimes, and sometimes we get in power, sometimes we don't. I mean, that's the answer to that, right? I mean, it's like, so we have to, but, you know, back to the point of that mindset, I do think that's very, very important for us to challenge the mindsets of some things that were passed. Again, values have been great in terms of working hard, taking care of your family.
Right.
But the mindset, I'll give one example that I've said before. One of the mindsets that Black community has passed down again and again and again is to work twice as hard. You've heard it, to get what? Half as much. I'm like, no.
Half as much.
No, I'm like, I work twice as hard and I expect twice as much. I mean, hell, I'm gonna be like this. Like, I'm gonna be like the white guys. They work twice as hard and expect 10 times as much.
10 times
That's what I want.
And then I got in the Air Force. Air Force taught me a whole new mantra. They said, work smarter, not harder. So essentially, if you can make your mind do it and put it together, there's no reason why you should be physically in the space doing it yourself, you know? So
Amen.
Like, yeah, using that mind, work smarter, not harder as well. Yeah, I'm definitely not going back to that old mindset at all. When you got everybody out here running up a check, I can't do it.
So tell me about transitioning from serving in the military to being an entrepreneur. It sounds like you did learn some good lessons about your mindset, but I imagine it had to be a little bit of a challenge, especially moving from a military schedule where you have essentially things mapped out in a very structured way, than having to go out and you didn't just go get a job. You went to be an entrepreneur, which is really the diametrically opposite to having a structure. It's like you figure out what your structure is.
Create that structure.
Yeah.
Right,
what was the challenge with that, or was it not a challenge because you had that structure kind of taught to you in the military?
Right. And see, that's exactly what I was going to say. So for me, I feel like the challenge came more on like figuring out the business aspect of it. I think the discipline and putting in the hours, I already kind of learned that from the military. In the military, you're taught to do more with less. So within my business model, I pretty much did the same thing. And I believe that's what kind of made me successful within my first couple of years, is because we really did more with less. Like I would be the dispatcher, the packer, the driver that dropped it off. I'm everything in the beginning, at least for the first year and a half, it was all me, you know? And it would be so funny because people would call in and they'd be like, you know, hey, I may have an issue with this product. I'm like, hold on, let me get you to the manager. And then I'm picking back up the phone like, hello.
Did you change your voice? Like, hold on.
Oh, of course. I had to switch it up every now and then and change the voice or pass the phone to my shorty, have my shorty talk. But, you know, like in the beginning, you got to do those different things because, like, for me, I didn't know how to create a payroll. I didn't know how to create budgets and things like that yet. So I had to really learn each aspect of the industry that I was in. Just so that when it was time for me to put people in place, couldn't nobody tell me nothing crazy, you know? So That transitional part I I don't want to
That's
say
a
it was
challenge.
the yeah, that and I said it on IG the other day. I said, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we make it look too easy. I wish I could have like taken y'all through that piece too. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
the
Like,
shit
so
ain't
you can
easy.
see the
Like
nice
it's
win.
10 times harder than what
I'm
it looks
up.
on.
Yeah.
People out
Yeah.
here, most people are perfect about the entrepreneurial lifestyle and lying about it.
Yeah, it is not. It is not difficult. And I don't say that to turn people away from it, because I feel like it's a very freeing thing, but you got to know how to control and understand those freedoms and know that, yes, you may have freedoms, but you still need some sort of structure. You still got to wake up every day. You still got to answer the phone calls. You still got to do things to actually make that entrepreneurial lifestyle work.
You have to be the hunter. I mean, I think that's the difference between because you still often have to work when you have a job and you get up a certain time, but like no one else is going to figure out how the money's
giving
coming
you
in.
that opportunity. Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean?
And you got to go out there and call,
pick up them phone, and don't make it to where you have a staff and people who depend on you and people you have to take care of. Then the stress is even more, because now you're the last person to eat as the entrepreneur.
Yep.
I think people forget that piece. Like, I don't get my checks until everybody on my team eats. Until everybody on my team eats, because I know and I understand that that's my workforce. Like that's the people who keep me in place and keep me sane and make sure the operations move the way it needs to. So you always want to make sure your team eat first. And then, you eat on the back end. Sometimes that plate ain't that big.
Yep.
Sometimes it's huge,
Exactly.
But you gotta roll with the punches as they come.
Yeah. What's a story or a moment that you can disclose? Because I know you were also intelligence in the military that really stuck out with you, like that was maybe a transformational moment that you've applied that through life, or you've applied that through your business, if you can think of one.
Oh yeah, no, there's a time that stands out to me. I went to a commander's call one time, and my commander brought a little rubber ducky out. He brought a little rubber ducky out and he put it on the podium. And his speech was, he said, some people may look at this and try to call it a woodpecker or a bird or I call it a duck. It's a rubber ducky, So his mantra was, you call it what it is. You call a duck, you call a spade. And I feel like that's helped me out throughout my business and personal life, because you cut a lot of the minutia out. A lot of times things can be handled when you go direct, when you have those direct conversations. And in business, sometimes those are those conversations that are the hardest, that people don't like to have. But you call a duck, as the boss. Sometimes you even if it's family, like I've had family work for me. My sisters probably hate me right now. Nah, they love me, but in the beginning, like my very close sister was working with me. She was like my
I don't do family and business too much. My mother works in there, but my mother works with me only because she's like my accountant, but like she's helped me. But like, but that's only because she's my accountant for support. Really, she's just doing it to help. But like beyond that, I don't.
It's tough, and you got to do that as the boss. You got to call a duck. If it doesn't work, you can't keep.
So you had to fire family.
And prodding of it. Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. I've had to move off from family. I know.
Like, I love you, but
she
like,
gonna see this interview and be like, "Oh my god."
I love you, but we can't love you. But like you, that's how businesses end up failing, though, right? If you can't, like, you can support your family. Like, this is the reason why I can support you. But like, what you can't do is have someone.
Nobody's above the business.
No.
Nobody's above the business. And that's a mantra that we have on our walls. Like, nobody's, not even me, even the person who created it. Like, if I'm in the way, somebody's going to tell me I need to step out the way to make sure that the process moves to that next level. And that's what I built my team on. That's what I built the company on, is we call a duck, and that nobody's bigger than the business, because this is how we plan on feeding generations and creating that generational wealth. So we want to make sure that we keep that intact. So I'm not the CEO, Miss Ayana Young, she's our CEO. So she does a lot of the regulating. She's the one that puts on that chop hat when it needs to, but we've built this team out to be this, for me, like I said, I started off as just in my garage, literally being the one packing the product, putting the product, talking to the customer, doing everything. And then we kind of expanded it to, now we have it to where it's like it's like a women-led business, which I'm all for. I have 5 sisters, and then Miss Ayana Young, like I said,
that's why you raised. I had 2 older sisters, so
yeah. Yeah. And then I know, women just, they got that. They know that me, I play the operation role. Like I'm more hands-on. I can get things done, but
You and I are
that
opposites. I'm
keeping
the
things in
CEO.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you like the CEO piece.
Yeah. That's more my thing. And
Yeah. I like that operation side. I like to split it off, like
that
let the
makes sense.
CEO kind of make everything, work how I need to work and then I'll make sure that we can bring the money through the door.
Well, that's important. Usually the CEO does that. That's interesting. Like, so that's
Mm-hmm.
an interesting paradigm. So what's some advice you would give your younger self, knowing the things you know now? It can be before the business, before your service in the Air Force. And what advice would you ignore?
That's a good one. So what advice would I give myself? Honestly, the younger me, I would have probably told myself to save more. My dad passed away when I was young. So I had a lot of money at a young age just from my pops passing away, so it should have put me in a better situation. But it didn't, I was young and dumb and I blew it. So essentially I went to the military because I was tired of paying for school out of pocket and running out of money and stuff like that. So I think for me, I would tell my younger self to just slow down a little bit and save a little bit more. It could have probably saved me a lot of little headaches throughout the way, but I feel like those kind of made me who I am as well. So
Sure.
Sometimes I wouldn't want to change that. And what's some good advice?
Or I didn't say good advice. Advice you would ignore. People give all types of advice.
Right.
So I didn't say it was good.
Okay, so the advice that I would recommend everybody ignore is the fear advice. Like you're gonna have a million people that you tell your idea to. One, I only speak about my idea once. Like that's another good thing I tell people too. The more you talk about something, the more you start fantasizing that you're actually doing it and you're not. You speak about it once and then you put a plan in place to actually do it. Yep. And then as you do it, you can kind of see like, your ins and outs. So I would stay away from the fear speech. One time I told one of my ex-friends about an idea that I wanted to do, and they started placing kind of like their fears on me, which made me then, look at the industry like, should I not? I almost missed out on a bag because they weighed their fears on me, so I would just watch out for the fear speech, and then everybody has their opinion. Leave it at that. Let that be their opinion. If you feel like if you have mapped out this goal and 1 + 1 = 2, then you need to go ahead and explore how to get 1 and +1 and to make it 2.
Yeah. I really want to talk about the point you made with the ex-friend you had that put their fears on you. When I talk to anybody about success, I say the most important ingredient, one of them, is the people you surround yourself with. The people you surround yourself with are really going to determine your future, your future, period.
Oh, that's facts.
Right? Because and scientific studies have shown the people that are around you literally rewire your brain. So if you go on and try to say you're in an environment that you think you disagree with, and everybody just has these crazy beliefs, and you go in every single day with the resistance of, I'm going to keep the way I feel, I'm going to do this. Science says otherwise, that no matter how hard you try, eventually your beliefs will start to conform with a group without you even realizing it. Because people affect us. We're tribal by nature. So if you're hanging around losers, if you got around 8 losers, you're gonna be the 9th, right? And I think this also said, like, if you hang around 10 broke Negroes, you're gonna be the 11th. Like it's because that's how it works.
And then the thing is, that's how you elevate as well. As you got to elevate your circles, because what I've learned is like my circle that I had in high school isn't the same circle I had in college, isn't the same circle I had in the Air Force, isn't the same circle that I have now as an adult. And I need to, as an adult, figure out how to get from that. I know now you have 4 million. How do you get to 10 million? How do you get to 20 million? And it's all about the circles that you surround yourself with, because those opportunities come up within those circles sometimes. So,
and people get this
absolutely
twisted. People get this twisted, like, oh, are you saying you cut off family? I'm only saying cut off family if they're toxic. Right. Because if they're toxic, like the family, but like that we ain't like.
But it's too stressful. Entrepreneurship is too stressful.
Like life is too stressful. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, like if you being around toxic people, energy is real, right? And we only have, and it's finite. We don't, not you, not me, we don't have an infinite amount of energy. Like, we're not God. So like, people come to us and their emotional energy, it drags on us, their negative, the mental energy. And if the relationship isn't one that's building you in some way, like, to me, it also doesn't have to be all of my, make this be very clear. All of my relationships don't have to be like, you're helping me in an economic way. There are other ways people can help and support, right? You can help emotionally support, like all those things. But if it's not about uplifting and moving in some positive direction, if that's not the dynamic of the relationship, why do I have the relationship?
Right. No. And that's absolutely facts, because you got to evaluate that, especially for me. Like, I'm an empath. So I like to help people. I like to like put people in position, try to put people in place to win. And a lot of times those energies aren't always the best. And me as an empath, I need people who can actually feed that piece of me mentally, like mentally stimulate me. That's what kind of gets you to that next level, because our minds are always thinking, always working, always trying to figure out what that next move is to make sure that, we get to that next level. So you always want somebody feeding that machine with positivity, good energy, because you do give out a lot. And you're absolutely right. It's not a situation where you have infinite energy. No.
So Kern, what does the next level look like for Higher Collection? Like, what does the journey look like? There's no ultimate success path in terms of like, I get here and this is success, but 5 to 10 years from now, what would you feel is success for you in that moment in terms of your journey?
So for me, I feel like within 5 to 10 years, I would love to have like a space. I would love to have a school, a transitional school space that teaches, shows people how to do things that, we weren't traditionally taught. Like for me, I also own cattle. I have a whole farming side to me that wouldn't have known. Yeah, I wouldn't have known unless
you got a farm in California.
Farmer.
You got.
Oh yeah. 20 acres with cattle as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, I wouldn't have known anything about that until, shout out to Mr. Cleveland, my black rancher mentor. He put me on in 2016. He was like, you know what? I need you to go get a brand, go get your cattle brand. So, we have our own brand that goes on our cattle. He said, for tax purposes, I need you to get into the agriculture industry, because what the government will do is pay you to feed people. And he has not shown me anything wrong since. So what I want to do is I want to create an atmosphere that can give this knowledge to other people, because if you're not in the room, you don't understand that the government will give you a loan of up to $300,000 for equipment. You pay over 40 to 60 years.
Oh, wow.
They'll give you up to $2 million to purchase farmland, as long as you put it into production within a certain amount of time. Like, agriculture is kind of like the backbone to the United States. So a lot of times I want to teach people just the knowledge that I've known, and then put people within the space that can teach people more knowledge, because that's really what it's about. You don't know what you do not know. So I'm hoping within the next 5 or 10 years, I have a space where we can actually teach people what it is they need to know, probably help out some of our homeless veterans, bring them within the space, get them into a transitional program that can kind of ease some of our infrastructure issues. I don't know if you've seen lately at the ports, people are backed up almost 3, 4, 5 days waiting for trucks to get loaded up and stuff like that. I feel like the veteran population was used to fight war overseas. Now we have a huge war kind of going on here in the United States, where you have ships actually circling in the sea, like in the Pacific Ocean, just because they don't have any place to come and offload on the West Coast. So things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's all about workforce. The workforce is becoming the issue. So we want to champion that. We want to get ahead of it, because we see it being an issue. You see everybody's talking about going autonomous now, like, starting to put robots in place and self-driving vehicles and, trying to get rid of the workforce. But we know what America was built on. You know what I mean? So. No,
I agree with you. And I'm, part of why I'm in Web3 is to empower people. We have similar, our hows are different, but our whys pretty much the same. It's about empowering people. And I just got through with a really good book. And if you got, it's called Homo Deus. I don't like everything he says at the beginning about everything, but he's very good in terms of talking about, like, it's called A Brief History of the Future, about where we could go. And it's about
it is about AI and about the fact that, there's the new religion around data science, that religion is everything, and not a religion, that data is everything, and that
it
data
is everything.
Right. It is in a way, but they do it as such as is a religion, right? That is data the most important, and then is data more important? Is that the most important thing for us as humans? The second question is it more important to have intelligence or to be conscious? And that's important because what the scientific community now is decoupling those two to say,
they're making it
you don't need
separate.
Consciousness. You don't need consciousness. We just need intelligence, and we can use machines for that. And the third is, what happens when these systems, these artificial intelligence systems and organizations know more about ourselves than we do? What happens to humanity at that point, right? And how much control do we give them? Anyway, I get into that to say that, we have to be involved and aware of what's going on, because innovation is not slowing down. I do think a lot of jobs will be, I'm not championing this, but I'm just, human nature will be automated. Perhaps a bunch of new industries will be created on top of that, but maybe not. We've also never seen such rapid change so fast. And we've never seen traditionally the jobs that have been replaced have been manual labor, to have us replace to use our brains more. But what happens when artificial intelligence can think for us? Then what happens?
Right.
So
and that's facts. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Because you got to even think like in the metaverse too. Like, I've just started getting more and more into the metaverse, and I'm like, this is crazy. You could literally, I had a meeting in the metaverse the other day. We went into a meeting room.
Tell me about where was that meeting? In Oculus. Okay,
yeah. So Oculus. So with the Oculus, you can pretty much set up meeting rooms. Folks can come in, and you can actually have a meeting with people from, whether it's other states, other countries, and you can actually like walk up to a board, draw on the board if you wanted to. I could go sit at the computer and check my email. It's pretty interesting. Like,
oh wow,
it's definitely.
I have an Oculus here, but I've never used it, so I might have to.
Oh, you have to. You got.
I'm in the metaverse stuff, but I haven't even used the Oculus, right? Like, I'm actually.
No, you have to.
All right, that's good to know. Like, you had a meeting on the metaverse. All right, we're gonna.
Yeah. You can create pretty much virtual reality meeting rooms. Set it up how you want. We could be at the spa. We could be at the Lamborghini dealership if we wanted to. We could change the background. And then for me, I actually have meetings at my office in the metaverse. So essentially I can invite people into the meeting. I'm sitting in front of my computer.
Do they have to have Oculus
now? Oh, yes, sir. Yep.
They have to have Oculus.
Yeah. And then I can check my email right in the metaverse. It's pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy. So, all right. So I want to get to some lightning round questions as we get ready to wrap up. So let's all right. What's an important conviction you have that very few people agree with you on?
Important conviction that I have that very few people agree with me on.
Yeah, that's a tough question on purpose.
That is a tough one. Oh, Lord. Okay. A conviction that I have that very few people agree. I mean, I'm a Patriots fan. I don't know. People don't agree with that.
But half the people.
That is a good question. I don't know. I need an example of that. Like what's an example of the conviction?
I'll give you one.
I got a good example.
I think that most people believe that they are inherently good, but they're a lot worse than they think they are and could be in the right situation. So when you look at a situation like Nazi Germany, and people look at well, how could all those people go along with such a horrible practice? I'll say very easily, because that's what humans do. And when you're in a situation, you'd be surprised. Most people wouldn't do the noble thing that they think they would if it meant their survival.
If it meant their survival.
If it meant their survival. Right. So and people look at slavery was cool for about 300-400 years, right? I mean, and then the practice is brutal, and people accepted the truth because people will tell themselves lies about how good they are and rarely see. They'll automatically see how bad others are, but they'll rarely see how bad they are, and they're never as good, including myself, as we believe that we are.
As we believe it. And so on that same conviction, for me, I always say, I never ask people tell me three good things about yourself. Like I always want to know people's bad all the time. I never ask anybody anything good about themselves. So that could be something that most people don't agree with me on, because I don't want to know what you feel like is good about yourself. Let me know what's bad, because anybody can say like what's great about themselves. I could do that all day long, but I do that myself. I never really want to know the good things about you. Like, let me know the bad things. Like you have bad time management, or you like to gamble and you like to waste money. You know what I mean? Because those are the type of things that you want to know, just so I know how I got to deal with you. And I won't put you in certain situations that are trigger the things that you're bad at.
Right. So, that's a hard question to answer, though, man.
That could be it. Yeah.
That's a hard. If you ask that question in an interview, there's right ways and wrong ways to answer that. But I think what you're looking for is self-awareness, right? Like self-awareness to see if someone is self-aware of areas about where they should play and shouldn't play. And I can answer that question easy. Like what Rob shouldn't do is operations. That's not me. Right. So like, it's like, I'm not the operations person. I'm the vision person. Can I do operations? Yeah, but that's not where you want me. Like you don't want me in operations. You don't want me in CFO. What you do want me is you do want me to bring in the money. You want me to lead the vision. Right. You want me to set up the basic structure for how things are going to work, to create an environment that will create innovation. But you do not want me to be the COO. Like that's never. Somebody say COO, I'll be like, nope, I'm not your person. Nope. CFO, nope, I'm not your person. If it's a marketing job, I can do that. If it's a leadership job, rallying people, rallying a vision, bringing an organization together, I can do that. And again, I can, not that I don't understand and appreciate operations. I really, really do. Mm-hmm. And because I'm working with a startup company, I've had to really dive into it. But that's not where my natural skill set lies. So, I mean, I just tell people that question requires you to understand, to be self-aware and to know how to, and to have gone through that introspection. Most people don't, right? I think that's the other thing. That kind of goes to my question earlier. Like you go through the introspection, like, yes, I'm like, I hope I would have made the right decision in those situations, but no one can guarantee that they would.
No one can guarantee they would, because they haven't been in that situation.
Exactly. Right. People are adamant, about like, I would have stopped slavery. And I tell people, probably not, especially people that say it like that. Or probably not. I would have
because you don't know how much work that would have took. And then are you willing to do that work?
Do you do the work now for social justice or risk anything? Like, if you're not taking a lot of risk on social justice right now, I can guarantee you would not have taken the position against slavery. Had the whips. Because it would have meant that you would have had to risk your privilege and wealth. And people don't normally do that.
Want to do that. Facts.
Which is human nature again. So anyway, all right. So other questions. So you have a committee of 3. These can be living, dead, to advise you on business, life. Who are these people and why?
Ooh, I think I would go with Kobe Bryant first.
Okay.
1, he's my favorite basketball player, but 2, his work ethic was really what drove me to be so in tune with him. So 1 would definitely be Kobe.
Work ethic. Yeah.
Insane work ethic. So I would just want to be able to pick his brain and understand that discipline aspect of it, and how he kept that up for so long. So how many people you said? 3?
3. That's 1.
Yeah. So that's 1. Number 2, I think I would love to sit with Tupac.
Pac.
Yeah, Pac, because I felt like he was a visionary, way past his time. Like,
you from California? You're a Pac person. Yeah. That makes sense.
And that's the thing. I'm from New York. That's the
you're from New York. Wait. Oh, wow. You traded to your cause, man.
I live in Cali, but I was raised in New York.
Tupac over Biggie. Okay. Go ahead.
And the thing with Pac is I felt like Pac just was more of a visionary. Big. Of course, being from Brooklyn, I love Biggie, but Biggie showed me everything that I wasn't when I was a kid. I wasn't on the corner. I didn't do none of that stuff. You know what I mean? I think for Pac, it was more of the vision and what we could be as a people and as a community if we just got our shit together. Like I felt like that's kind of like what I get with Pac.
Him and Nipsey were just we lost these brothers before they got a chance to really make an impact, because I think they would have made obviously Nipsey already did, and Tupac's legacy is still with us, but I think he could have done so much more had he lived longer.
Oh, for sure. And then 3rd would be Ye. Honestly, I would love to probably sit down with Kanye.
What would you ask Kanye? Kanye's he's on the podcast. Ye, we talking to you. Kern got a question. Let's go.
Well, I would love to hear. I would love to hear why around some of his moves. Even with support of Donald Trump. I'm not necessarily. I wasn't necessarily against that. I just wanted to know the outside the box thinking for that, because a lot of people will hate me for it, but I identify with Republicans, Democrats, and independents. I'm not a wholehearted Democrat. I'm not a wholehearted Republican. I feel like there are certain aspects of every party that could benefit us as a culture if we embraced it more. But Kanye was really starting something, and folks really shut it down because nobody wants to think outside of that box. Everybody wants to be a Democrat. But what is a Democrat? Like, what exactly does that entail? Does it save your taxes? No. Does it help you get to that next level as an entrepreneur? No. Like, what does it do? What does it do for you? Does it help you with social justice? Or is it just a title that we're running under because everybody else run under it? Human nature, like you said, Yep. So for me, I would just want to know, like, that outside the box thinking that made him take that, leap of courage in everything that he does. He went and got on the board of Gap. Like, Gap used to sell their clothes for like $9 to $19.99. I went and Gap the other day. There was a sweater for $140. I was like, what? But those outside of the box visionaries are definitely people I would love to tap into, because I feel like that's where you gain the empowerment, is when you start thinking outside of that box that people try to place you in. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I really think Black folks have to be very strategic about how they approach everything, right? And it's about you have to be like,
because every other race is strategic about how they approach everything, even something as simple as picking their judicial individuals within their own neighborhood courts. Like, like, best believe somebody's golfing with that judge on Sunday. Like, you know what I mean?
No,
they're on the golf course
I
with them,
completely
or eating
agree.
lunch with them.
I mean, it's all a game. I mean, I had a belief. I think Donald Trump was super crazy. So, but I think he's an outlier to all of this. He was. I mean, like, I think he was dangerous.
Yeah, no, I feel like he was a disruptor. I feel like he went in there.
It was definitely a disruptor. It's about how one does it, right? Like, I think he was disrupting for chaos and attention. But like, I disrupt. Sure. I disrupt for empowerment. So disruption is fine. But I also think, to your point, it really helped expose some things in the system. So what at the end of the day, like, we gotta hold people accountable too. So like, we gotta hold Democrats accountable, which we vote overwhelmingly for. And look, I've run as a Democrat before, but I also, I'm out of the system. So I'm going to give my honest assessment to say that we got to hold everybody accountable, and we have to be involved in the process, and we got to have some support from Republicans, because you can't do anything in America without them. Right. And Republicans do this better than Democrats. Like, they hold the line. And so even when Democrats
they would look you in your eye and tell so what you gonna do?
So what you got to do is
nothing.
They will do nothing. And, and so that makes them a force. Even when they're not the majority, they stick together. They stick together. Like, they stick together. So you can't do anything without Republican buy-in at some point. So if we can get to the point where we're non-emotional about this, and we figure out how we're moving in a strategic manner, I'm all for it, because there are some things you can get accomplished when you get both parties on board, and that's where we need to go. And I would love to be the only thing I didn't like about the current the current debate in the last election was that, Trump was so far, like, I was like, all right, there's some things I'm not going to compromise. Like, he talks about us like we not existing, but like, I think Kanye to the point, but I never really went after Kanye and said this or that, because I'm assuming Kanye either one has some type of strategy, even if it was helping his brand. Like, he went out there and he did some stuff, and I don't agree with it, but like, Black people can have a different opinion. It's okay. Like,
and that's facts. And that's okay.
It's okay. Like, he can have a different opinion from me, and I can still respect
his opinion.
I can respect his opinion, and I can still respect everything he's done, and not write him and cancel him off because I don't agree with his vote, even no matter how controversial. Like, because Kanye's also done a body work, because a lot of people criticizing him haven't done half the things he's done for the Black community.
At all.
Period.
At all. Like, period. And the fact that he became a billionaire doing it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so
and he's helped and
now
employed a lot of Black people too. So like at the end of the day,
and then he realized what he needed to get into them rooms. Like, you
Yeah.
can't get into certain rooms unless you do have that be behind your price tag. You know,
Yeah.
like,
and he leveraged to get there off of just a hustle and his. I think Kanye, no matter what, I don't agree with everything. Kanye's a genius, man.
Genius, man.
He is high
genius.
level, next level genius, and I would definitely sit down and have nothing but respect for what he's accomplished in his vision and what he's done. So, final question: you have a billboard or a Google ad that summarizes your statement or your belief or your saying in life. What does that say?
Nobody's bigger than the business. Nobody's bigger than the business. Yep. And I think I stick to that because, again, this is how we want to create our generational wealth. We want to pass this from generation to generation. So you got to make that your plateau, and you got to support that, and you got to put that in place and make sure that stays strong and keep pushing forward. So that would probably be like huge for me, is just nobody's bigger than the brand. Nobody's bigger than the business.
Cool. Kern Alexander, it's been a pleasure to have you on Disruption Now. Appreciate you, man.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.